How we doing, everybody? Welcome in. Extra dough. We're going to be talking some SEC previews here today. We got the whole slate lined up. Going to talk about each and every team in the SEC, what we're thinking about the conference title odds, what we're thinking about their win totals, and just in general, what we are expecting from each of the teams in the conference this season. So before we get into it, we have Mr. Sam Murphy here, Dumb Brain Picks, another member of the Paid for Play crew. How we doing, Sam?
Feels great, man. Feels great to be back. College football, it feels so close. We got Hard Knocks airing tonight. I mean, we're basically just kicking off football season full swing right now. I always say SEC Media Days are unofficial start of college football season. But, yeah, we're right in the heart of fall camps now. We got some news coming out, battles being decided. But it feels great. I'm ready for college football to be back on.
Absolutely. Only a few short weeks away. I haven't even been keeping track of Hard Knocks. Who are they doing this year?
It's the Lions. I had to look it up this year because I felt like it was that time of the year for it to start, but I didn't actually know who it was.
So that must be the reason why there were Lions clips popping up on my Twitter feed. And I said, I don't know what Lions fans I'm following, but for some reason I'm hearing Jamal Williams give a pump-up speech.
That is why you saw Jamal Williams crying today.
All right. That makes sense now. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. All right, folks. Let's get into it. So SEC, a little brief conference overview. So last year, in case you were living under a rock, most teams were living under Alabama shoe, quite frankly, because they were getting stomped all over. It was basically them and Alabama. It was a two-man show. Alabama won the SEC championship game, and the rematch, obviously, Georgia took that one. Kind of a strange year in that half the teams in this conference, at least half of them, will be starting a transfer at quarterback this season. So that's something we'll talk a lot about. You know, that's the day and age of college football. But nothing really exemplifies that more than the SEC this season. There's some teams that are totally reshaped and revamped by the transfer portal. Alabama, we'll be talking about first. I mean, they're not immune to change. You have to adapt with the times, and we're seeing some of these programs do that. So it's a new twist. Obviously, we've seen transfers before, but never at this level. And the SEC is obviously where you see a lot of these guys who are trying to get their draft capital up, trying to compete at the highest level of college football. We're seeing a huge influx of talent, even more than we were seeing before, Sam. So am I safe to say that the gap between the SEC and the rest, I know the Big Ten is still there, obviously, but the gap seems to be only widening with the new rules and the changing landscape. Are you seeing what I'm seeing there?
Yeah, I mean, recruiting, it was already as one-sided as it can kind of be. And like you said, the transfer portal is massive. Like my team especially, like we are basically doing the Mel Tucker format of reshaping your entire roster through the transfer portal. I mean, I think Georgia's the only team that didn't take a transfer. They didn't take a single transfer in the portal, and that is kind of surprising because a team coming off a national championship, you'd think like, hey, let's stay on this ride. We got a good amount coming back. We got Stetson coming back. You lose a weapon in the transfer portal, but yeah, I mean, the rich get richer. Alabama got 4 of the best transfers I think there were available, and they returned the Heisman Trophy winner and maybe the best player in the country in Will Anderson. So, like, yeah, it's incredible. Just some of the transfers within conference, like LSU starting quarterback from last year is going to be playing at Texas A&M. You have a former All-American going to at LSU going to Alabama and Eli Ricks, and then there are other like LSU and Arkansas essentially did a trade, like 2 players for each other. So it's going to be weird to see like just how it all plays out. See if it gets affected at all with some new rules coming up now that we're out of like the COVID time, but it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, obviously it's a huge plus for a lot of teams. Like you mentioned, the Mel Tucker, like everyone hopes it works out as well as that worked out at Michigan State, right? And like even on a lower level power in group of 5, like Bailey Zappi broke all your boy Joe Burrow's records last year transferring in from Houston Baptist with his coach. So obviously it's not always going to go that smoothly, but it's something we have to handicap, right? See which coaches we think are adjusting with the times correctly. So, all right, with that being said, let's jump right into it. One of the teams we mentioned utilizing the transfer portal, Alabama. They get Jahmyr Gibbs, running back transfer from Georgia Tech. Going to look a lot different than Brian Robinson. But the offense is going to be electric. You still have Bryce Young there. The defense we saw take a step forward. Will Anderson might be the best defensive player in college football. They kind of slipped there a little bit last season, but you get second year of Bill O'Brien, supposed to be a lead on both sides of the ball. The odds-on favorite to win the national championship this year. Over under win total set at 11.5. They're minus 140. They're the favorites to win the SEC, to repeat as SEC champions. A lot of people forget they did actually win the conference last year. Returned 12 starters and then 50th in returning production. That's actually not too bad. Last year they were way down in both those metrics, and this year it stabilized somewhat. So what are you thinking with the Tide this year, Sam?
I mean, Alabama's going to Alabama. And the rich get richer, like I said, about the transfers. You got a full-on replacement at a left tackle with the transfer for Vanderbilt. I think it's Steen. Is that correct? And then you have, like you said, Jahmyr Gibbs, who's one of the best backs in the country, even though he's been in just a horrible program at Georgia Tech. But he comes in, you get an All-American from one of your biggest rivals in the division at cornerback, and he may not even start. Like, he might be riding the bench. They have one of the best secondaries in the country, and they have – if there's a defensive player who can win the Heisman, it's Will Anderson. And not to mention they have, like, the Heisman Trophy winner returning in Bryce Young. Like, I don't foresee anybody stopping them. There's no real competition in the league just because of how, like, next level they took it with what they have coming back. And I don't foresee any way you could take under 11.5.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think I'm on board. Like, looking at the schedule, I don't see a loss on the schedule. Of course it could happen. I mean, they almost lost to Auburn last year, and they lost to Texas A&M. I mean, we'll talk about them later, but there are some teams in the conference that are obviously Alabama's hitting the transfer portal. They're getting the best players. Like, they got their Jahmyr Gibbs. They got Jermaine Burton. Their star wide receiver this year is going to be from Georgia. Like, Georgia won the national championship, and they pilfered their wide receiver because Alabama actually airs the ball out. You don't have to have Stetson Bennett as your quarterback. You can have Bryce Young as your quarterback and still compete for a national championship. So, but we see there's other teams in this league with talent. If you have an off day, if Bryce Young gets injured, I don't like discussing injuries, but that's really the only way you'd be taking the under here. So, definitely not for me. Minus 140. I mean, it's them in Georgia. I think it's clear cut, just like it was last year. Like, it's going to be the end of the season. You're like, well, Georgia's going to be playing for the SEC championship in all likelihood, and minus 140 odds. I mean, I guess they could conceivably be the underdog. Like, Georgia could run the table too, but that seems like completely fair odds. I wouldn't hate anybody taking that, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, if you just want to, like, get a cash at the end of the year, put a little extra on it, play the juice. I mean, Georgia's a great team, but they're not going to beat Alabama in the SEC championship.
I wouldn't think so. The way I look at it is Alabama, Nick Saban is talking about it as a down year. And like I said, the returning production was way down last year. They're talking about it as a down year, and they won the SEC, and they almost, they were in the national championship game. Like, it was a close game. John Mechie was hurt, and then Jamison Williams obviously got hurt during the game. Not making excuses, right? But that was a down year for them. And then this year, like, pretty much everywhere, they're going to be projected to be better. They don't have a weakness. The whole wide receiving group is going to be new, but they threw transfers there. They have 1 million 5-stars. If that's the only weakness in the offensive line, I'm glad you mentioned that. They tried to patch that hole. They got a 2-year starter from Vandy. I don't see it. So I think I'm on the Bama train. I know, Sam, you probably don't want to say anything more positive about Bama. So should we?
Yeah, I'm on the verge of throwing up at this point. So.
All right, I feel you. All right, Georgia Bulldogs, national championship a year ago, 14-1 record. Their win total set at 11, so just below Bama's this season. Plus 150 in the championship odds for the conference. By the way, that's the way we're discussing these teams. We're going to go in order of their conference championship odds. 10 returning starters, 79th in returning production. So a little drop there. And as you said, they didn't hit the transfer portal quite as hard. So Kirby's really relying on his talent that he got there. And we saw what that talent did last year. And if you recall, trying to think back to the beginning of last season, it wasn't like they were being discussed as a juggernaut. They were being discussed as a team that's top 8, possibly a team that could make the playoffs. But they weren't really supposed to be a juggernaut. And Kirby said, look, these kids I got here are juggernaut, and they were one of the best defenses of all time. So what do you think, Sam? You think they're gonna reload internally and they're gonna be just as good, or what are you seeing here?
They're going to be one of the best teams in the country. I think it's hard to disagree with that. But even though I watched Stetson Bennett do it all year last year and get the job done, I just can't pick him against Alabama, even though he did it literally for the national championship. So I don't know. I mean, like, I think this win total is a push. That's the way I'm looking at it. I think they're a great team. I just think they lost way too much. They're going to reload, but guess what? You can't go 12-0 every year, like even in the SEC. The back half of their schedule is brutal. It's a very tough stretch. Even though they're in the East, you still have to play all these difficult teams in succession. And I think they slip up just one of those weeks. And they'll probably go 11-2 overall for the year and maybe sneak into the playoffs. But yeah, as a championship contender for the SEC, I don't see it. They lost too much on defense.
Yeah, really the question is, like, you're assuming they're the next Alabama already. If you're assuming they're just going to reload like this, right? They're just going to pull off what Saban's proved he could do year after year. And you say, well, yeah, they're Bama. They beat Bama last year, but it's doing it year after year. It's doing it with, again, Stetson Bennett. He was fine, but this is his 6th season of college football, and there's a reason Jermaine Burton transferred to Alabama after winning a national championship, is the way I'll put it. The SEC East, they are 27-2 against the SEC East since 2017. I think the schedule, I mean, there's definitely potential losses, but as far as SEC schedules go, it's actually not that bad. I know you open with Oregon, but I mean, you're probably going to think you're going to win that. It's just eventually those away games. You play at Mississippi State, at Kentucky. I think you could lose those, but otherwise, I mean, they're going to be heavily favored in every single game. So there's always a chance they go out there, they lay a dud. Stetson throws a couple dumb picks because he does that a handful of times this year. And the defense just isn't going to be quite as elite, and they don't bail them out. Because last year they didn't even get close to being – they didn't even need to be bailed out. Like, the games were just not close. This year there's going to be a few close ones. So, yeah, I agree. I think it's probably a push.
Yeah, that's my thing, is the defense was so dominant last year. They didn't even need Stetson to go win them games. So, like, whenever you only return 3 of those starters, yes, some of those guys have experience also. But, I mean, the guys who won last year, they lost in the SC championship game against Joe Burrow. Like, Jordan Davis is in the highlight clip of Joe Burrow running around. Like, that's going to be my only Joe Burrow mention of the night. But, like, yes, like, those guys have been they were battle tested, they were proven, and they were in that program for a long time. I think it's going to be it's a reload year. They go 11-1 or 11-2 at worst. Like, if that's a bad year or a rebuilding year, I'll take that 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, certainly. Like, I think we're both saying the same thing. Like, we're like kind of down on them where we want to be. There's a lot of signs pointing that it's not going to be the same dominant team. But at the same time, like, even if they are down, like, what are they going to win a couple games? 28 to 21 instead of 38-0. So yeah. I think they're quite clearly established themselves at the top. It's just hard to take them. All right, so let's move on. Another team that wants to be at the top, Jimbo Fisher is trying to get them to the top, talking his way to the top, recruiting his way to the top, dropping duffel bags to every recruit in the country to try to get them up at the top. I saw you putting a thumbs down here for A&M, so I assume you have some kind words here for Mr. Jimbo Fisher. You want to wish him well on his undefeated season, on tackling Nick Saban to the turf 2 straight years. Let's hear it.
The best thing about A&M's season is going to be watching that game against Alabama, because they're going to get skull fucked. Like, it is going to be so bad. But I think they have too many question marks. They still don't have a quarterback that we've seen. They have to go to Alabama. Like, their schedule is hard. Like, they have a tough draw, and I think the momentum is going forward, but you don't have a ton of returning production, but you do have all this talent coming in. It's going to take a little bit for that talent to show itself. And yes, it's the best recruiting class ever, but that doesn't mean they're going to come in and just take you to a national championship. That recruiting class might end up being the first national championship truly ever bought. I don't know why they continue to say they aren't using money. Like, it's legal now. Just accept it. Let's all be on board. This is legal. Stop being so defensive, Jimbo. But yeah, I think it's A&M. I don't. They're going to go 8-4. It's what they do every year. And they're going to go under this total, and they're going to win 8 games. It's just what they do.
Yeah, I don't want to get too bad. You already went there with
JD. They had to beat an LSU team last year just to get to 9 wins, and they couldn't do it.
Yeah, the thing I don't get. I mean, and again, I'm not going to get on a huge tangent here about college football and how it's all about recruiting and everything like that nowadays. But the fact that Jimbo all of a sudden is thought of as some like coaching extraordinaire and like he's up there on Saban's level knocking at the door. Like, this dude Jimbo is nowhere close, in my opinion. This dude Jimbo hasn't shown he can coach a winning football team, hasn't shown he knows how to construct a cohesive offense, hasn't shown he knows what to do with any of the talent he recruits. He hasn't shown a damn thing, in my opinion. So I don't understand why we're talking about Texas A&M this way. I will admit they're getting close. If you keep recruiting like that, you have to be close. But I still have questions like the offense. Like you said, we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. We don't know if they have any difference makers at the skill positions. We think your best wide receiver right now is probably Evan Stewart. That's a true freshman. So you're talking about a true freshman as your best guy. The offensive line wasn't good last year. You haven't shown
Max
you can coach
Johnson
them up
is
to
your
be
quarterback. You're not going to do well. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, they have options, but like, Kellen Mond was there forever, and that's like the best quarterback we've seen from Jimbo in a long time. Like, we just haven't really seen he can recruit. Like, we're talking about him as the elite recruiter, and maybe it's the true freshman they got right now, Connor Weigman. But I mean, all reports out of spring are that he's still behind. Like, Haynes King's running with the ones now. They haven't picked their quarterback. I don't know who the skill guys are. The offensive line was bad last year. They should be better because they started a bunch of underclassmen last year. And then the defense, you have a good secondary. I'll give you that. But then even like the defensive front where you're recruiting all these 5-stars, like I still have questions because you lose your top 4 guys from a year ago. So what are you going to play like a shitload of freshmen? Like, I understand you're going to be solid pretty much everywhere because you can't have 5-stars on the field and not be solid. But when I'm talking about you like knocking on the door at Alabama, I agree with you. I think they're going to get kind of woken up here. That being said, Sam, I see 9 wins on the schedule because they play teams
dude, I don't see it. You're trusting
they play Sam
too much.
Houston. They play UMass. I mean, it'd be so hard not to win 9 games. So I see them like doing that typical A&M thing where they come out hot.
Alabama and they still couldn't get to 9 wins, JD. They beat Alabama.
That's true. Home of your favorite chant. Would you agree with that statement?
SEC. That's not my favorite chant. That's your favorite chant.
That is. I did confess to yelling that. I did. But we'll get to the Hogs. Only one team can make me feel that way. All right. Let's move on here. Arkansas Razorbacks just in time, baby. Yeah, I'm wearing an Arkansas shirt. I love Arkansas. This is my favorite team in the SEC. I don't know how it happened. I'm a bandwagon fan, apparently, and I don't even know what there is to bandwagon when you get 9 wins. But Arkansas has been hurting. They don't look like they're hurting anymore. That being said, people aren't believing. They got a 7.5 over-under. By the way, there's like 8 of these teams in the SEC are sitting at plus 5,000. So they're all in the middle. So we'll talk about if there's a team we love in this range. Obviously, I love Arkansas, but like they lose a lot. You were talking about LSU, like took half their secondary. Treylon Burks was one of the best wide receivers in college football. Huge part of this offense. He's gone. The rushing attack, he averaged almost 230 yards per game. KJ Jefferson is like 260 pounds at quarterback and one of the best deep passers in college football. So I love him, but I don't know who he's going to throw the ball to. You got Keaton Jackson out there. Jayden Hazelwood, this 5-star kid at Oklahoma who really hasn't done anything in like 3 years at Norman. I'm really worried because even last year with Burks, when they had to throw the ball, they weren't good at it. They did a fantastic job of staying on track, staying ahead of the chains because they were running so well, and they'll run again this year. But I still have questions there. That's enough to make me a little concerned. And then the defense, I love Barry Odom, but he did a great job up front. I talked a lot about last year. Like they did a lot of 3-man fronts. They really tricked teams last year. You lose like your top 2 guys up front. I think you're going to be really solid at linebacker. You got Bumper Pool, had 125 tackles. He's a star, and he's got a great name. And then you got Drew Sanders transferring in from Alabama. Kid looked like a stud in the spring game. And then in the secondary, like, again, the corners aren't like fantastic, but Barry Odom can scheme well, and Catalan's a star at safety. So overall, like, it's just solid enough. But when I look at the schedule, Sam, this schedule, I know it's the SEC, but their schedule, I mean, oh my God.
Even fantastic, dude. It is one of the best schedules I've seen all year.
I don't know why they're making this. It's Arkansas. Like, you're Arkansas. When you're scheduling these games years in advance, who's sitting there thinking we're going to walk in and shit kick Cincinnati? We're going to walk into Provo week 3 against BYU. I don't know if it's week 3. I don't have it in front of me, but I don't know who made the schedule. It's too tough. I'm saying they get to 8 wins.
It's October 15th now at Provo.
October 15th at Provo. And you're playing Cincinnati week 1. And that's before you even get into the SEC schedule. And there's no breaks in the SEC either. Man, I don't know. But they're going to get to 8 wins because Sam Pittman, he doesn't look like a magician. He doesn't look like much. But, yeah, it wouldn't shock me. I mean, last year they won 9 games. And, like, everyone's talking about how they're better than their record says they are. And I'm like, wait a second. They won 9 games in the SEC. Like, that's good. What do you mean? That's a good record. So, I don't know, Sam. What do you think? Am I drinking too much Kool-Aid? Am I head over heels? Are you seeing some more negatives? What do you think?
I might be drinking more Kool-Aid than you, brother. I got them at 9 wins. I mean, I love the schedule. It's going to be tough, but they are going to do what they do best. They return 4 offensive linemen. They return one of the best running quarterbacks in the country and one of the best rushing attacks. Like, if they can just get some production throwing the ball, they're going to beat teams into the ground with this possession that they have throughout the game, running the ball. And then the defense is going to be solid. I think whenever you have a guy like Bumper Pool in the middle and you just have this continuity of staff that they've had, because it's one of the best staffs that they've put together in the SEC, and they just continue year over year. And I think that improvement is going to be enough to where they get to 9 wins. They stay at 9 wins. Mute.
I can't forecast a team like this to take a step back. Do we trust Sam Pittman? That's a good question. I trust him as a football coach 100%. I talk about this like with the Mario Cristobal. These offensive line dudes get overrated because they coast offensive line. Who cares? That's what you need at Arkansas. Like, he turned around that program way faster than anyone expected because they got that in there. Yeah,
Can I put it in a way that I think only I can truly understand? He's a better Ed Ogeron. Even though Ed Ogeron had that national championship year, I think he's good enough to maintain this or keep his ego out of it to where he doesn't meddle. He lets his coaches coach. And that's what got Ed so fucked, was he did not let his coaches coach, and he just continued to get in the way and meddle. And that's what Sam Pittman has shown that he hasn't done yet. And I think that's why you are seeing Arkansas build and not like shoot up to the sky in this rocket ship and then collapse and burn.
I love what he's doing. I love Kendall Briles. They're going to have a power offense. You know they are. My issue is, like I said, the schedule, you're not going to out-talent teams. Like, you're going to have so many close games, and you're going to need that physical style to be on point every game of the year. So I think what the concern is, so many close games that could go either way. There's no breaks in the schedule. Like, even when you play Liberty halfway through the year, a Liberty team, that's not a team you can just roll in there and start your backups in the second half. Like, that team at least can play. Hugh Freeze may not be the best person on the universe, but he's a good football coach. So I'm just worried about that.
He can score some of them points, can he?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm positive on Sam Pitt. I see the negatives in that they just can't out-talent teams. It's not going to be easy. They're going to need to be on point. But I just think it's a go-to style that teams just can't match up. When you coach up the offensive line to be that great, and you have such a great offensive play caller, such a great running quarterback, you got multiple backs. Rocket Sanders is going to be a breakout star this year. They're going to put him in the slot. He's going to look like Traylon Burks. He said, I thought Traylon Burks graduated. Who is this kid? And the next thing you know, he's in the backfield and running people over. Like, this team, they got it. They got 3 running backs. They got the running quarterback. Even their backup quarterback's the fastest dude on the football team. and he's playing wide receiver too. Like they got guys. So I think it's a tough style to play, but I think I believe in them. All right. Next up, Tennessee, Sosa's favorite team. Tennessee, Josh Heupel. He surprised me last year. So I'm going to be positive about Josh Heupel. Yeah, they surprised people. They went from 21 points per game in 2020 to 39.6 points per game in his first year. So like 20 points per game, automatically completely revamped their style. This year they got a win total set at 8 flat. They returned 15 starters and ranked 17th.
It was 7.5 tonight before I got on.
I popped all these from the same book. I don't want to give them credit because they're no sponsor. I popped all of them from the same book. So yeah, do shop around. Be sure to shout any out if you see a different price on me. But what are you thinking here for Tennessee, Sam?
I like what Josh Heupel did. I mean, he made Tennessee fun again. If nothing else, he didn't bring them back to like national prominence, but they're fun to watch. And if I'm being honest, I need Tennessee to be better than any other team in the East because they play Alabama every single year. They're the only team from the East that does that. They are the bane of my existence because they've been so bad for so long. And they give Alabama no game. But I love what they're doing. And I think it's Heupel's best team, but the defense has to be improved from last year. And if they want to take the next step, I do think they hit this over if you get at 7.5 because I think they have the potential to be a 9-win team, maybe even a 10-win team. But I mean, just you have to play Alabama and Georgia already. Those are 2 likely losses, and you have to go to LSU, which that will probably be LSU's biggest game. They may not have the talent, but it's tough to go into Death Valley and win. And so I mean, I see them at the floor 8 wins.
Yeah, I agree with you. So when I'm looking here, first off, I don't trust the defense to get better because it's Josh Heupel, and he doesn't care about that. He doesn't coach it up. We saw that at UCF. They had some good defenses he got there, and they no longer did. So I don't trust them there at all. I don't trust their D-line. I don't trust their secondary. I think they're going to be pretty much the exact same team they were a year ago, except the offense could be even better because Hendon Hooker's like 25 years old. This kid's going to run for like 700 yards and 10 touchdowns. He's going to throw for like 3,030. He's the perfect quarterback for Josh Heupel systems. We haven't seen a kid like this truly mobile in that system. And then Cedric Tillman at wide receiver is just going to catch a million touchdowns. So I don't know if Brew McCoy like still plays football or he's interested in getting suspensions or what his deal is, but that's another former 5-star out there. You got Jalen Hyatt. This kid's like showing out in the spring. They have weapons. They're going to run the ball, but they're going to be the same team they were last year. And that's okay with me because that's a huge improvement on what we've seen. The reason I also would side with the over, I think I see 6, I don't want to say easy wins, but I see 6 easy wins. Ball State, Akron, Tennessee Martin, Missouri. We'll talk about them later. I don't really think much of Missouri. Some people say that's not an easy win, but whatever. At Vanderbilt.
It's an easy win.
Yeah. So that's 5. And then you play Florida, home at Florida. I mean, I'm not high on Florida, so I think they'll be a touchdown favorite
6
in that
wins
one.
Easy. Yeah, I agree.
6 wins easy. You need 2 more. You already mentioned some of the possibilities, but they are on the road, so you're going to have to win some tough games. But like week 2 at Pitt, if you take the over and they beat Pitt week 2, I mean, you think you got it pretty much in the bag. So I would lean that way.
What's the total set at for that game? Is it out already, or what is your guess? I think it's got to be like 84, right?
Against Pitt? The Pitt game?
Yes.
I don't think it would be that high. Well, yeah, it'd be pretty high. You're probably assuming Tennessee gets 40. And then Pitt, yeah, it's got to be in the 70s, I would assume.
78.5.
There we go.
We got there.
I don't know. We got Pat Narduzzi giving all these quotes about how he loves to run the football this year. They had their Heisman guy, Pickett, almost had a Heisman season, and Jordan Addison won the Biletnikoff, and now he's talking about how he got rid of the OC because he wants to run the ball more. So we'll see how he does that against Tennessee.
See, this is why some coaches just don't stay at the top.
Yeah. All right, so it sounds like we're looking the both way. Looking the same way on Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Sosa says Heupel the evil genius. I think I agree. All right.
All right. I saw upset Bama.
I don't know where to go. Upset. I mean, hey, look, even that Bama game last year with Tennessee, like they were in the game for 3 quarters. And
Just
now,
make it competitive. That's all I need.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like I'm sitting here talking about how Heupel can't coach a defense, and I firmly believe that. I think if he could and he made a right defensive coordinator hire, or if he starts recruiting that way, I think they're in absolute serious business. So I'm sounding negative. It's just like I think they're anytime you have that offense,
There's
and
way
it's not
too
like
much
they just
hype around them coming into the year, so you're sounding negative.
exactly because I think they're in there in every game. Like anytime, like the Cedric Tillman kid went for 200 yards against Georgia. Like the offense works, and it's not some gimmicky offense. It's working in the SEC. They run the ball. They have multiple backs. They have a running quarterback. They have, like I said, studs at wide receiver. So yeah, I'm a fan overall. All right, Kentucky, fresh off one of their best seasons in program history. They have a win total of 7.5, so expected to take a significant step backwards after winning 10 games a year ago. They do return 11 starters, 42nd in returning production. I'll let you start here, Sam. What are you thinking about Kentucky?
I've always had this like affinity for Kentucky, just in the sense of like I know I have a lot of friends that cheer for UK, and like they are diehard, like actually cheer for Kentucky football, not just the basketball team. And seeing them do good, it makes me feel good. So like Kentucky has always had a little soft spot for me, or I've had a soft spot for them. I think there is regression here, but I don't see it being that bad. I like Mark Stoops is just a good coach. They're going to have a solid defense. The offensive line will need to fill some holes, but you have the best quarterback Mark Stoops has had. You have the best running back, or not the best running back. You have a really good running back in the SEC. And I mean, I just think they're too steady. If Will Levis has the type of year that warrants him being taken in the first round, I think they smash this over.
I'm conflicted on Kentucky because this is one of the programs. Like I have programs like Arkansas. I said it last year about Ole Miss. I just don't want to say anything negative about them because in the long run, you got to think long term is a better or anything. I'm a believer in Mark Stoops. I'm a believer in the program. I like what they do. So I'm conflicted because all of a sudden I feel like I was lower on them than everyone last year, and I was lower on them than everyone this year. Like I feel like people are just I don't know. It's almost like I think people are late to the party, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So let me just try to list my concerns. First off, I'm not going to mention how Will Levis is a complete maniac because it's disgusting. If I say it live on a mic, I might vomit, and I don't want that to happen because this year is on YouTube.com, and I don't want to vomit in front of everyone. Okay.
We got to push those views, JD.
I could do it. I could say, yeah, I'm not going to get into it. Will Levis. This boy's got some things to figure out in his life, is what I will say. If I'm thinking about drafting that man in the first round and I've seen what he puts in his coffee, I mean, my God, the Heisman voters better think about things.
Same line of thinking there, by the way. You can't trust a guy like that with your first round pick.
Can't trust him. So let me just say Kentucky. Let me list my concerns. So first off, the offense. You had a breakout year last year. Will Levis is getting the hype. Cool. He could throw the ball far. He led the SEC in turnovers. Okay. And he had a good year. I'll admit he surprised me, but he led the SEC in turnovers. Half of his yardage went to Wan'Dale Robinson, who was a breakout star, played at Nebraska, who's a joke of a program. So no one knew who he was, but that kid is special. And we're seeing him now getting a lot of buzz in camp, even though he's like 150 pounds. So good luck with that. But anyway, he loses his go-to guy. They had a first-year offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, and he was part of that revival offensively. Now he's gone, and he left pretty late in the recruiting process, so you didn't really get your full time to prepare. So they got a new offensive coordinator, Scangarello, however you say this dude's name, from San Francisco. So it's quite clear what they're trying to do. They're trying to have the same NFL scheme because Liam Cohen brought the Rams, the Sean McVay coaching tree, and now Shanahan, right? They run similar concepts. It's going to be pretty much the same thing, except they're running more outside zone this year, blah, blah, blah. But I'm concerned with that. I'm concerned at running back because Chris Rodriguez is out here. Who knows exactly how long the suspension is going to be with his legal issues. The offensive line, I love their offensive line. Part of the reason I love this program, the Big Blue Wall, but they return only 2 starters there, and they lost their offensive line coach. That's big. So I think the offense takes a step back for sure. Defensive line is totally new faces, but they got good kids there. I'm not really sure what the cornerback deal is. Overall, I just have questions. So looking at the schedule, I'm considering an under, but then I looked at the schedule. I see wins against Miami, Ohio, Youngstown State, Northern Illinois, Louisville. You've traditionally smashed in that rivalry game, but I do think Louisville's going to be pretty good this year. But you have to like your chances there. So if I give you all 4 of those, Vanderbilt, good luck, Vanderbilt. So that's 5. You don't play Alabama, at Florida, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Mizzou. You have to win 2 of those games. I don't think Mizzou's very good.
I think they catch Florida at the right time.
I think 2022 is the right year to catch Florida, to be honest with you.
That's very fair, but I think week 2 with neither team really playing a week 0 game, I just think the steadier program has success. I know it's at Florida, but I mean, Kentucky's played Florida really well the last few years.
That's a good point. This is a team I don't have a strong read on, so I'm going to tell you to listen to Sam. Because like I said, I don't like saying negative things about this program. I wouldn't take it under. All right. Let's move on. Team we have been mentioning.
Yuck.
Florida. Yeah, I'll get this one started. First, let me list them. So they went 6-7 a year ago. Bye-bye Dan Mullen. In comes Billy Napier. Their win total set at 7.5 in his first year. 13 returning starters, 85 returning production. So not a lot happening there. This is their 4th coach in 10 years. The roster's kind of a mess from what Dan Mullen left him. I was reading their reports from Billy Napier during the spring game, after the spring game. He said they couldn't even run like half of their playbook because they didn't have the personnel to do so. So depth is a concern. Their starters are good, but you're going to get through an SEC schedule and have your whole starting lineup remain intact. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen personally. And even if you do, I don't really see like easy wins on the schedule, obviously. So overall, I think Napier, he's downplaying this team as much as possible. I don't think it's coach speak. I think it's quite clear he's making this a long-term, it's a long-term process. I really like, he's a weird dude. He's interesting. Napier. Like, did you see, they're saying he like writes down every single thing that happens in his day. Like he journals like every single little detail, like every single thing. And he said he goes back and he reads it and like, oh, well.
So I got to hear like a lot of the negatives about Billy Napier just because he was thrown around a lot in the LSU coaching search, but nobody, like no LSU fan, this is different for me because I'm not in Louisiana. No LSU fans wanted him, even though he had great years at UL Lafayette, but nobody would accept the Louisiana Lafayette coach to come to LSU. None of the fans wanted it. So yeah, he's a weird guy though. I've heard many interviews with him. He's a weird guy.
He's a strange guy. I want to like him, so maybe long term we'll see. We'll see. Right now, I don't really have a reason not to. You know what I'm saying? He's had winning programs. He's thinking long term. I agree. I think the way the roster's looking, you got to think. All he's got
to do is recruit, because Dan Mullen just refused to do that.
He's already getting some negativity there. I mean, I don't know. I guess he's never been at the SEC at this level, but I mean, in my opinion, I don't know. We'll got to wait it out. The schedule is not easy. You playing at the Swamp, but you
start with a loss. You start with a loss, maybe 2.
And then you play Kentucky next game, right? Is it Kentucky? Yeah, I think you start 0-2. So
I think they could legitimately start their first 4 games 1-3. And that's just not how you want to start the year.
I'm not seeing it. I mean, especially if like I mentioned, the depth is a concern, and you start Utah and Kentucky, 2 programs built upon physicality. You're not playing Tennessee Martin to start. I don't really see how the confidence gets started. Offensively, I found a fun stat in one of the preview mags. They return only 13 of their 53 touchdowns. So, like, I know everyone thinks Anthony Richardson's going to be a star because he could throw the ball 80 yards on a rope and he can run as fast as hell, and he's 250 pounds. I mean, I get it. He looks like he's fresh off Mount Olympus, but like it also looks like he hasn't really been seasoned as a quarterback because he's been up at Mount Olympus doing whatever them folks do up there. So, I mean, I don't know. I just don't really see a lot of positives. Like offensively, like what else is there to say offensively? I don't. And then defensively, like there's not really much to say. They're going to be solid, but the depth is a concern and the schedule is hard.
Yeah, I think there'll be much stronger running team, like use Richardson in the running game because they have a good stable of running backs. But nothing they do is going to like impress anybody this year. So I mean, I think it'll be like a 6-6 year. I'm not taking the over here, or it's maybe 7-5. If you get that 7.5, take the under.
I saw that this morning at the book I pulled it from. I think it was juiced a little bit, so 7's more widely. Yeah, I would take the under.
Yeah, I mean you're gonna push probably at max.
I agree.
Let's go, baby. Lane train.
All right, moving on. Ole Miss. Another team, plus 5,000. I was really high on this team a year ago. They did win 10 games, 10 regular season games. That was the first time in program history they've done that. Wasn't enough to get them Arch Manning. Neither was the $15 million. That was still not enough to get them Arch Manning. Okay, this year, I don't even know where to start with this team because it's totally different. Like, everything's different, okay? Like, Lane Kiffin's still there. Other than that, you lose your top 4 rushers. You lose Matt Corral, the face of your program at quarterback. You lose your top 3 wide receivers, your top linebackers. You lose Jeff Lebby, the architect of this offense, and who some people were calling like more of an assistant coach than offensive coordinator. Huge for that program. DJ Durkin, remember how awful their defense was in 2022? And all of a sudden last year it was like pretty decent out of nowhere. Well, now DJ Durkin's gone at defensive coordinator. I don't know. I'm kind of pessimistic looking at this team. But then I'll take a look at the schedule. Troy, Central Arkansas, Tulsa, Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech. I mean, that's 5 wins easy, so you need to get 3 more to hit it over. So I guess the schedule kind of evens it out for me. But what are you looking at here, Sam?
I'm very interested to see how Lane is without Jeff Lebby. I mean, a lot of people were saying, like, it's not all we want to see Lane get back to, like, his Alabama days, I think, in that offense. And they have a good quarterback coming in. I don't think Jackson Dart's as – I know you were pretty high on Jackson Dart last year, if I'm correct.
Let me just brief Jackson Dart. I love Jackson Dart. I love the kid, but it's not one of those like I love him. He's gonna go out there and dominate. Like it's not I'm a LeBron stan. He's gonna go.
You love him from a fantasy perspective, I think.
It's from fantasy. It's because here's the thing. He played his high school ball in Utah. I mean, Utah competition. He wasn't supposed to play as a true freshman. But he did by injury, and then he gets injured, hardly plays, had a lot of turnovers, isn't really comfortable in the pocket. Like, I love his tools because he's big, he can run, and he can huck the ball, and he threw 400 yards and 4 touchdowns in his first game in college football against a conference opponent. So I love his potential, but, like, all reports in spring, he looks terrible. He had, like, the worst spring game I've ever seen. Like, I don't even know how it's possible to look that bad. He looked like he never played quarterback in his life and was out until 3 a.m. So, like, the pieces could come together. Zach Evans is going to be an absolute star, and Michael Trigg is a really good tight end. But like the pieces have to really, really, really come together, and you have 2 new coordinators.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the schedule, if you're just taking like, obviously that 10-win season is fresh in the brain, but you have to like remove that from what this team's going to do this year. And whenever I initially looked at it, that's what I did. I was like, oh, this team, like, it's Lane train, baby. He's going to score 100 points. I'm just going to take the over in every game and hope I'm going to stay away from any sides and just hope that we get a fun popcorn, grab your popcorn, folks, game.
I would think this team could go a lot of ways. I think the overall how I'm leaning, like I think since Zach Evans, I think this kid's an amazing running back. No one heard about him because he went to TCU, but he's going to be a star. I think and the offensive line wasn't great last year, but I think they're going to be more run centric, especially because even if Dart is the starter, he's like I said, he makes a lot of mistakes. They're going to try to minimize those mistakes to win ball games, right? It's not like Matt Corral you completely trusted last year. And if it's Luke Altmaier. You think Luke Altmaier is going to go out there and throw the ball 45 times a game to like beat these teams? I don't think so. And defensively, I don't know what to expect defensively. It's a totally new. You have like all new transfers. Like I literally don't know what to expect. So I don't know. I think overall, I could see him even like continuing to go down that path of not what you're thinking of the Lane train. So yeah, I think I'm on board with that. All right, ready to move on?
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it. LSU Tigers. I'm going to mute myself and let Sam.
No. You got to be in this because you are. Are you still upset about Brian Kelly? I know you're I know you're kind of a Notre Dame fan.
Listen, I was never as upset about Brian Kelly as most people to start. Like, I understood it, but the longer that's gone on, I'm like getting more resentful. It's hard to describe. So yeah, I think overall I don't like Brian Kelly, but I would like to see him do well because I don't know, I think he's a good football coach. So in a weird way, I'm actually rooting for him.
Yeah, I think Brian Kelly coming in is great for LSU. Like, it's the first time in my adult life that there's not a fucking idiot more roaming the sidelines. Like, you have somebody who, whenever you get in the locker room, they can coach you to a win. It's not just talent. It's not just who else is on the sideline playing in the game, like it has been for the last 15, 20 years since Saban left. Like, Saban laid the groundwork for Les Miles and Ed Orgeron to win national championships. And if it's any other program, you cannot say that. So with that being said, it's going to be a difficult year. I mean, if the total is at 6.5, my book that I saw the lines, I had 7. I think it's a push. I think your ceiling is, if everything has to go right, 9 wins. Like, the 7-8 win range is great, and I think it's achievable because you have a coach on the sidelines that can win you ball games and not just rely on the talent, not just say, hey, let's just go out there and play the game. So offensive line and secondary are still pretty big questions. You got some transfers coming in on both sides, a little more talent in the secondary coming in. You have Seven Banks, who came from Ohio State, all Big 12 corner, and from the best defense in the Big 12 last year, Oklahoma State. And Jared Bernard-Converse, he's in at corner also. And one of the best defensive lines, I think, in the country. They're just so deep and so talented that I think they'll be able to keep you in the game. If Brian Kelly can do what he does best and coach up a good offensive line, like, I think you have 8 wins, and that would be great momentum going into next year.
Yeah, I'm overall, I think I'm higher on them than the market is. I agree with the overs. And I did actually earlier a couple weeks ago, I did a bet MGM insight. So they opened them personally. So not the same at every book. They opened them at 7.5. There was some early money on the under, so they moved it down to 6.5. And then since then, I think it took the number 1 percentage of tickets and number 1 highest handle of any college football prop of the offseason. So that's probably why you're seeing it move back up to 7 at spots. I think you have to go over 6.5. It's very simple. It's Brian Kelly. They have a ton of transfers, so who knows what to expect. But what I do know is they're going to have a good defensive line. They have a ton of talent there. I think it's underrated. I get you don't know who the quarterback is, but like, you have 3 options. It's a healthy competition.
In all reality, like, it's not the best quarterback in the country, but collectively as a unit, it's one of the best and deepest quarterback rooms in the country.
Jack Cohen was not the best quarterback last year.
No,
Jack Cohen, so he could find a way.
I think all of these guys are probably better than Jack Cohen.
Maybe we'll see. Who do you think it's going to be? So I know Denbrock's a running quarterback guy, which leans towards Daniels. Kelly's all over the place and likes to play multiple guys. I heard Nussmeier got first team reps the other day, so it's up in the air. But what are you thinking?
I want it to be Nuss so bad, man. I love Nussmeier. He's got so much swag, but I don't think you can ride with Nuss. I think if it had to be me, I think it's Jayden Daniels, because I've never seen Jordan Jefferson can run, but he couldn't throw. I think Jayden Daniels is a little bit more of has a more talented arm. And just this receiving core is freaking awesome. Like,
it's really good. It's
those weapons plus a questionable offensive line, like, his legs would be an absolute weapon. And I would love to see it. I think he could do what Ritter did last year, but I also don't want Desmond Ritter to be my quarterback. I'd take him this year because I don't want him to be my national championship hope of a quarterback. So, like, in out of context, I would take Desmond Ritter style of quarterback, and I would think Daniels fits that the best. Miles Brennan, behind this questionable offensive line, we saw that in 2020. He got killed. And if he's just going to be a statue back there, it's just not going to go well for him.
Yeah, I think I like that Ritter comp. I think he profiles extremely similar to Ritter, some of the positives and the negatives. So I do like that point. I think he was overrated when he was a freshman. So everyone's like, ooh, shiny new toy who can run and throw the ball. He got totally overrated, and now everyone's talking about him like he sucks. And I don't know. He's experienced. And I think
he was also. He was a 5-star coming out of high school. Like he had. It wasn't his fault for that hype, and it was a shortened season, or he played through 2 shortened seasons. Just in a. I don't know. After 2019, Arizona State just hasn't felt the same, and I think they lost a lot of momentum whenever they got slapped with some of those penalties for the recruiting. During the dead period, but I digress. I think I like the way Jayden Daniels fits in Denbrock's offense.
Yeah. All right, we'll see. So sounds like we're higher on LSU than the market. So
I could see BJ Ojulari being a huge piece just because he's got that. He's going to play in that Josh Allen role in Matt House's defense that Josh Allen at Kentucky had so much success with. So I could see that being a big plus for them on defense.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a talented player. Defensive line is really talented. All right, we're going to move on because we're at 50 minutes. We still got a couple teams. We're now finally past the plus 5,000 range. Like I said, every team other than the first 3 in the last couple. Mississippi State. So their win total is only at 6.5 this year, 7-6 a year ago. Did not do so well in the bowl game against Texas Tech. It's year 3 under Mike Leach, which has usually been a great year for him in his system. Once he kind of gets, he's like a true air raid. I know there's a lot of passing teams nowadays that call themselves the air raid. It takes a while for him to get his guys in the system. They return pretty much everybody. I mean, 17 starters. I think that's the most in the SEC. They rank 12th in returning production in the country. So overall, I don't know. I think I'm higher on Mississippi State than the market. I just don't really see with all these plus 5,000 teams. I don't see why Mississippi State would be below these teams. It doesn't make any sense to me. At the very I don't understand why they're not at least in that group. I'm not saying they're great. I know they're still at a slight talent disadvantage, but I think they're good on both sides of the ball. You need a new guy to step up at wide receiver without Mekhi Polk, but this is year 3 of Will Rogers, the only true freshman quarterback to ever play for Mike Leach. Is now in his 3rd year in the system. So you could say what you want about the system being in the SEC and teams figuring it out, but I think that experience is a big plus. I think they have a loaded wide receiver room that's going to step up. You do lose some of your best offensive linemen, but it's the air raid, it's Leach. He'll figure it out. And then the defense has been overrated for what seems like a number of years now. I mean, they're a solid defense. They're not spectacular, but they're a lot better up front than people give them credit for. Schedule, they play Memphis and Arizona. Those are 2 Power 5 teams in the non-con. But I'm pretty low. Or Memphis is not Power 5. They're American.
Are you trying to pull a little Power 6 action like those old commercials?
I am. Yeah, they were in like the Peach Bowl or something not too long ago. But hey, I'm not high on Memphis. I actually think Memphis won this game a year ago, and I was pissed because I bet Mississippi State, and they were up by like 4.
I know I bet the over in that game, and it didn't hit.
That game was garbage. We're acting like that game never happened. Arizona won 1 game last year, so whatever. They're probably winning that. Bowling Green. I know they beat Minnesota, but Eastern Tennessee, I think it's an easy non-con. I'm giving you all 4 wins. At worst, you win 3 of those. If I give you 4, you only have to get 3 the rest of the year. Yeah, I don't know. I like the over. I like this team this year.
I'm just not impressed. I mean, it's just too easy to game plan against it. Like, I know Bo Pelini couldn't figure it out, but I think too many teams have had success kind of stopping the air raid or at least slowing it down enough to where you can pull out a win. And I mean, they're going to cross you to death and they return a lot, but if you return a lot from a good team, is it really going to improve that much? I don't know. I'm just not high on Mississippi State. Never am. So
if he just did small adjustments, they could be a lot better, but he's so set in his ways. The stats have been out there for a number of years now. When they run it in the red zone, they're one of the best teams at running because they never do it and the defense knows they don't do it. So when they actually do it, it works.
And they have 3 or 2 defensive linemen on the field right now.
Right.
They're
it's
begging
obvious.
you
They're not
to run the
disguising
ball.
it.
They're
Yeah.
begging it.
But Mike Leach refuses, and at this point, he is who he is. So it's unfortunate. And they got 2 good running backs too, but they don't use them. So
hey, if they're an over
yeah.
team, I'll watch all their games. That's all I need.
Well, let's hope we get some excitement from Mike Leach, because he's sticking a lot of people off. He needs to go back to his exciting ways. All right, talking about excitement. Everyone's excited about South Carolina this year. The shiny new toys. Spencer Rattler transfers in at quarterback after being the Heisman favorite last year and then losing his job and then not having his teammates show up to his birthday party. So it's probably a good thing he wasn't at the Heisman ceremony, because they wouldn't have been there. What's that?
I said better than CJ Stroud also.
Oof. Big oof. All right, so they were 7-6 a year ago, and that's weird because they were blown out 4 times. They lost on their losses. They averaged 20 points per game. They lost by 20 points per game in their losses. They barely beat Vanderbilt, and yet they made it to a bowl. They kind of gave it to North Carolina in the bowl, and now they got these shiny new toys. I like their offensive weapons. I don't know how it's going to put together, but I actually think Josh Van's a good receiver. They had graduate assistants playing quarterback last year. I'm literally not joking. They had graduate assistants. So I know neither one of us is high on Spencer Rattler, but he's not a graduate assistant. He's an upgrade at quarterback. They haven't had a quarterback drafted since 1990, so at least they're probably going to do that. Antoine Wells transfers in from James Madison. He had like 13,000 yards at the FCS level. I know it's FCS. And then Jaheem Bell is one of my favorite tight ends in the country. He's like not even a tight end. They're calling him a Debo Samuel. They're doing that thing where they don't want to say he has a position that every coach in America seems to want to do nowadays. It's not demeaning to give somebody a position. You can have a position. It's okay, fellas. But anyway, I kind of like their toys. I think they're going to be fun. They have a lot of returning production, a lot of transfers, second year of the system. Is that enough to get to 7 wins? What do you think, Sam?
Oh, dude, they have a brutal schedule. It's just so tough to find wins. I do agree with you that we're both not as high on Spencer Rattler, but we were also probably appropriately thinking of what he was going to do this year before that egregious list came out with him as the 3rd best quarterback in the country. Like it's one of the worst lists anybody in college football has ever produced. But he is a much improved situation compared to what they had last year. Like that will keep them in games alone. I don't think they'll be blown out a lot, but it's just so hard to find wins on the schedule. It's an absolutely brutal one.
Listen, I think they could lose their opener against Georgia State. Like, I really want to be high on this team, but like Georgia State returns everything, and that team beat Auburn a year ago. Like they did. There was some bullshit that happened. They beat Auburn. I don't care what the final score says, and they're going to be better this year. Like I'm not penciling that in as a win. Like trying to pencil in wins, like Charlotte and South Carolina State. Like that's it. So you play Clemson. You got the rivalry game always hurts you. So yeah, I'm with you. It's going to be tough. I think I think 6 is most likely here. 6 or 7.
They're going to beat A&M.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. They're a team that's going to pull some upsets and probably going to lose 1 or 2 that they shouldn't.
Yeah, they're going to play spoiler, but I think bowl eligibility, like just 6-6. If you go 500 this year, it won't feel great, but I'd see that as a huge win with the schedule. And you always have to play Clemson like that. That's been pinned in as a loss these last few years. So I think it'll be a fun year for them.
I think it's going to be fun. I guess the way I'm looking to play this team this year, no strong lean. I guess I lean under. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to play it, but if they're a favorite, I'm probably going to look the other way. Like Georgia State week 1, I'll probably play Georgia State, honestly. And if they're too big of an underdog, I'll take them because I think they got some better skill talent. So I think they're going to be overreacting to start. Like teams they're going to think they're better than they are, and they're going to lose a stupid one, and then you're going to get an overcorrection in the market. That's what I'm hoping for them.
It's kind of like Arkansas last year, except it was inverse, where Arkansas started out so well, and you could just play against them the rest of the year.
Completely agree. Then they're playing Georgia. It's a bloodbath.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Auburn. Went 6-7 a year ago, and Brian Harsin's year 1. So what did that lead to? That led to Brian Harsin promoting internally a new offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator because he thought they were so impressive on both sides of the ball last year. He had to promote on both sides of the ball. This year, they're listed at 6.5 wins. Pretty long odds for conference championship. They do return 13 starters. They do rank 56 in their returning production. They obviously do still have some talent. When I'm looking at this team, I'm extremely negative on this team. I'm extremely negative because I'm not negative. Like pretty much every team we've talked about haven't been negative. So I have to have a little negativity. You know, we've had Florida. You know, sure, Mizzou will be a little negative. But Auburn, I don't see the positive. So quarterback, you lose your quarterback. He transfers out. Your new quarterback's running from the police and making headlines. Your other quarterback.
And he can't run. That's the worst part.
He can't run a lick. We know it. He's not elusive. Don't try to elude. It will end poorly. I don't see it. And then your other quarterback, Calzada, who I guess is probably now the starter, he was so bad that he beat Alabama last year. He had a perfect game. He pitched a perfect game against Alabama, and then he still lost his job.
By Mac Johnson.
He still transferred out. Yeah. So that's how bad Calzada is. Wide receivers, you're not at an SEC level. You're not even close.
They haven't been. They just refuse to be.
They haven't been forever. They haven't been recruiting. There's no signs of life. Harsin thought he'd make it better by like firing the wide receiver coach, and I mean, it just no signs that they know what they're doing.
That guy's a nut job.
He's a nut job. They tried to replace him. They tried to be a coup. He somehow still has his job. They're gonna have to run the ball to be any good this year, and they could because last year they weren't good at running. They were 83rd in stuff rate allowed, 62 in line yards. They have two really good running backs, Tank Bigsby and Jarkus Hunter. They do, but you couldn't even run the ball with those running backs last year. You return 120 starts on the offensive line. So I think for them to be any good, you're going to have to average 200 rushing yards per game, and they haven't done that since 2017. The strength of the defense last year was your two corners, Smoke Monday and Roger McCurry. You lose both of them. You lose Derek Mason, who's a hell of a defensive coordinator, who was kind of the duct tape on this team a year ago. I don't like Auburn this year.
Yeah, I mean, and one of your non-conference games is Penn State. Like you're gonna lose. I do not like. I could see this season going so poorly for them just because of how bad the offseason was. It hasn't gotten better. You still have stuff going on all around like your team. Like one of these guys that's competing for your starting quarterback job is running from the police. You have the scandal off the field. You have all this like inner fighting and like is it collusion? I mean, it feels like just all the promoting from within. Like it's just such a cluster. And if they lose to Penn State at home and then 2 weeks later you have to play LSU. Like I hear all these people saying like they could be 5-0 entering SEC play, but yeah, I just don't see it. I don't know where that's coming from. And like it's just not a very good team all around. So I'm gonna go with under 6.5 if I can get it.
Yeah, I think they're the team that could scare you on that because they could start the year strong. I'm for sure taking Penn State in that game, but like you could start the year 4-1. You could build momentum. It's just like you're just waiting for the bottom to fall out. Like the program is not structurally safe. Like the foundation is crumbling and everyone knows it. Like it's obvious from the outside. I don't see how you could take it over. Like I get they're not going to suck. Like they have enough talent. They're not going to suck, but it's all negative for me.
Yeah, I just don't see it. So we'll move on. We got to get out of here. Big boys got to eat. I haven't eaten dinner yet.
I know. All right, let's get you two. Oh, it's getting late. All right, Missouri, 5.5 win total, middle of the road, returning starters 14, returning production. I don't like Drinkowitz. When he was hired, I didn't really understand. Like he had 1 year App State, and all of a sudden he got credit for App State. I don't know what the QB situation is. You have you didn't bring in transfers. Is what the storyline was, and now all of a sudden Jack Abraham, a late transfer who hasn't played college football in a while, now all of a sudden he's like the leader for the quarterback job. No idea what's going on there. You lose your star Tyler Beatty. Your defense sucked a year ago. You have a new defensive coordinator every year. I really don't understand what this program's trying to do. I guess it's trying to win football games, but it doesn't always look like that on the field.
They have 4 wins on their schedule, and that's it. They're not going to beat Kansas State at Kansas State, and they're only going to be the only SEC team they're going to beat is Vandy. So move on. I'm under. I don't have anything positive to say about Missouri.
My one positive thing to say about Missouri, I found one. I searched far. Well, first off, Luther Burden's going to be a great freshman wide receiver, but I found another positive. Their kicker is 257 pounds. He's 5'11", 257 pounds.
I just found a piece of content every week for Paid for Play Twitter. It's just him kicking.
All right. Last but not least, we got to find some content for Vandy. Here we go. Vanderbilt. They've had 3 winning seasons in the last 40 years. 2020, they went winless. Clark Lee, they go 2-10 under him last year. Clark Lee was not pleased with the upgrade from 0 to 2 wins. He has 5 new assistants. He also promoted internally for both of his coordinators, so new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. Your quarterback's Mike Wright. He can run around a little bit. He was recruited by UCF, so that'll be fun. You have a super fast true freshman in the slot, Jayden McGowan, decent running back. You start your year at Hawaii and against Elon. So I think you start 2-0, Sam. I don't know if there's another win on the schedule. So do you take the over thinking you just have to stumble into a win?
Under, dude. They're not beating anybody. It's Vandy. I understand Clark Lee was happy and all excited at SC Media Days saying that like they can contend. No, you can't. You're just not going to. So stop. I enjoy the laughing face. That was probably the best part of the Vandy segment, honestly.
I agree. Last year they had 2 wins, Sam. They beat UConn by 2. UConn.
Yeah, that was. Ooh.
They beat
Sorry,
Colorado
Stevens
State.
Catching strays in the chat. I know.
They beat Colorado State by 3, and they lost to Eastern Tennessee. It wasn't even close in their first game. So the 2 teams you beat, first off, weren't good, and both of them fired their coach after the year. Vanderbilt, meanwhile, hires both coordinators internally. I don't know what Clark Lee is doing. I like him from his Notre Dame days. I have no idea how this program's trying to win. Well. All right, Sam. Any final thoughts? Any big-time futures you're playing? I know for me, I don't have any exciting futures because I don't want to say it's a boring conference. There's a ton going on in the middle of the conference, but it's going to be Bama and Georgia in all likelihood. So there's no interesting futures.
There's no real futures market. If you could like bet on awards or anything, I'd maybe get into it. But yeah, there's nothing to betting Bama to win the SC championship.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Sam, thanks for joining me. Paid for Play, we're going to be back every Saturday morning, correct?
Every Saturday morning, 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. JD's going to have his coffee ready to go with us. It's going to be great. We're going to bring some winners. I am back to fully studying up for the season. I kind of got away from that the last 2 years, and it showed in my gambling picks. So we're looking to get back to 2019 form. Brian Kelly's fired me up a little bit, ready for college football.
All right, can't wait. Other than that, thanks for listening, folks. To Extra Dough, Paid for Play will be back at you soon. College football is just around the corner. See ya.
See ya.